couple questions people like me to answer at the top, so I just usually start with those. Usually, what have you been in? I started acting when I was 5, started doing voiceover when I was 7. My first voiceover job was a commercial for 7-Eleven, playing a 3-year-old, and I only got the job because I could read and had a high-pitched voice. And then I started working for Radio Disney when I was 8, and I did all of the promos for Radio Disney on the station, and I worked there up until Radio Disney was sunset during COVID. And I got to be a writer for that station, and I got to run my own board and have a radio show on Saturdays and Sundays from 8 to midnight, which was very, very cool. Most people know me for my work in anime and video games. I started working in anime when I was had just turned 18, working at Funimation. I've since done shows like Fairy Tail, Sword Art Online. I played Lucy in Fairy Tail, Asuna in Sword Art Online, Lizzy in Black Butler, Patty in Soul Eater, Red Blood Cell and Cells at Work. Let's see. I guess, well, Persona 5 is also an anime, but also a video game, so I voiced Makoto in Persona 5. I also play V in Cyberpunk 2077, female V in Cyberpunk 2077. Rhea, Sita, May in Fire Emblem franchise. I play Gage in Borderlands 2 and 3 in the DLC. And I play A2 in Nier, and I play
Chloe?
the Imagine in Fortnite. So I've worked on a couple of things. I've also done some on-camera stuff as well. I've worked on 911, Bones, Chase, Longmire, Friday Night Lights. And then my husband and I produced a web series called Confessionals, which is like a mockumentary style series about voice actors. And we got a lot of voice actors to be in it, which was very fun. We got to shoot on location at a convention, which was chaos, but it was also very fun. So we've gotten to do a lot of very, very fun things. I can answer any questions about acting in things, how to get started. A lot of people say, like, how do I get into voice acting? Acting classes, cold reading classes, improv classes. It might sound silly, but dance classes, because there's a lovely little thing called motion capture. It's super helpful. People also say, well, where do I take classes? Your local community theater, local college, jump in and take an acting class, community college, any sort of acting classes that are online. If you're not sure if something is vetted or if they're a great actor or if it's a great place to go, definitely check out what that person offering the class has been in and worked in. If they haven't worked in a long time or they haven't directed things in a long time, doesn't mean that you can't take the class. Just know they might not be able to connect you in something like immediately, but that doesn't mean they don't have great things to offer. Agencies, somebody asked about agencies yesterday. A really good resource for agencies so that you're not getting ripped off when you're ready to get an agent. And I wouldn't say like, I want to be a voice actor, I'm going to get an agent. You definitely want to get training first, and you want to make sure that your acting teacher or your coach is like, I think you're ready for an agent. Agents are very, very helpful if you want to get auditions. Yes, there are opportunities to get auditions online, but if you want to work for any of the big studios, because there are so many actors, they usually go to the same agents, and the agencies will submit actors that way. And it just helps keep things a little bit more organized so they don't miss your auditions. They're not expecting 40 different, they're expecting 40 different emails with different submissions rather than 40 to 50,000 emails, and your auditions would get lost that way. So you could check the SAG-AFTRA website, which is the Actors Union, and you could check for franchise agencies that will be legit, will be vetted, that are not going to say like, you have to pay us X amount of dollars in order to send out an audition. That's not how that works. An agent will take a percentage when you book a job, but they don't ask for money to send you out on auditions. So SAG will make sure that that is a franchised agent and will protect you in that way, which is very helpful. And SAG also offers classes and things like that as well. Do you guys have any specific questions to guide down the, yes?
What would you say your biggest inspirations are?
Man, it varies. I love getting to watch women who are in production as well as just being an actor, because that's one of the things that I think is most difficult about just being an actor, is you're constantly waiting for somebody to give you the opportunity to do a job. So, especially in the industry now, it is very important to be able to create your own work. So it's really cool getting to see people like Reese Witherspoon who are optioning books and creating series and trying to tell stories that haven't been told before. I think Viola Davis is incredibly inspiring. I got to work with Angela Bassett when I worked on 911, and I was so incredibly inspired by, she's an incredible legendary actress, but she's also an executive producer on that show. And just to see how she runs a set and is so conscious and aware of every person on set, the crew, the cast, anybody that's there for 1 day or 10 days, she's constantly thinking 15 steps ahead to make sure that everybody is seen and everybody is being represented. And it's lovely to get to see that. In the voice acting world, I've been very, very fortunate to work with a lot of incredible men and women, but it's really cool. The very first job that I got to work on, I hadn't really seen, I think when I was a kid growing up, I'd maybe worked with 3 or 4 female directors in my whole life. And when I started working in anime and video games, I was starting to see way more female directors. And so getting to be directed by Colleen and Caitlin, and auditioning for Monica, and getting to learn fighting efforts from Jamie Markey, like, that was so lovely to be embraced by these women who had amassed this career and were so generous with offering it and paying it forward. And there's been countless people that have looked out for me in that way. I think it's also really great. I love getting to go to museums or watching movies or watching documentaries and finding out about people that have not been talked about. Like they've done some incredible things and everybody has just kind of forgotten about it. And so that's what inspires me, is how can I tell their story so that people can see what incredible things they've done. And I don't want them to be forgotten because they've made such an impact in their small culture, but how can we show what they've done and inspire other people in the same way to do similar things. Yes?
What attracts you to one job as opposed to another other than monetary?
Honestly, the monetary gain is like very little of what my interest is. I will get auditions from my agent, and I usually submit for everything unless there's something in the project that morally or ethically doesn't sit right for me, or if I feel like this is a role that I cannot play to the best of my ability, like it would just be, there would be another actor that would play it better and more authentically, and then I will say, I'm passing for this reason, here's an actor that I think might be better suited, I just want to make sure that they're reading for this. Usually, as an actor, I think I've passed on very, very few projects because I know the likelihood of me getting cast in something is very slim, and that's always the case. And as an actor, your job is not to book a job and be on set or be in a booth. Your job is really to audition. That's the only thing that you're guaranteed, and sometimes you're not even guaranteed that. There are times that you'll go weeks and weeks without an audition, and you'll go, man, that one week that I had 10 auditions, I only submitted for 2 of them because I was like, oh, this would be a cool project. I should have submitted for all 10. Maybe I would have gotten it. So I usually submit for everything. Of course, there are things that I will look at and go, man, this project really speaks to me, and I would love to get to work on this in any capacity. I hope that they think that I'm a good fit. Sometimes they do, and it's incredibly exciting. Sometimes they don't, and you just say, on to the next. So I wish I could say that I was in a place in my career, and I think most actors would say this, where we have mountains of scripts sent to our house, and everyone's like, please, just pick 2, and that's all you're going to be able to do. That's not really the way that it works. We're still hustling and auditioning all the time, hoping we're going to get a job, because the life of an actor is really, you book a job, and that might be 4 hours of employment, and then, hey, congratulations, you're unemployed again, time to audition, hope you get a job. So yeah, there are projects that you'll be super stoked about, and you'll audition and be like, I'm gonna give it my best shot, but you never know if you're gonna get it. So what attracts me to them is whoever thinks that I might do a great job and lets me come to set to be a part of it. And just the fact that I'm accepted and someone's like, hey, we love what you brought and we want you to be a part of this, and that kind of just love and invitation is really exciting. And even if a project you're like, gosh, I don't know if I could play this character super well, it feels really out of the box for me. When you know somebody's believing in you and somebody says, I think you've got what it takes, somehow there's like a magic spark that you find that it brings it out of you. Yes?
Do you have a favorite character or favorite personality that you like to play?
It varies by the day. It varies by the session. Because I know what it's like to be the person who doesn't get the job and really wanted to get the job. When I do get the job, I'm just so happy to be there that I leave the session and I've been immersed in that world that I'm like, this is my favorite character I've ever played, this is my favorite project I've ever worked on. And then I go to another session right after and I'm like, this is my favorite character that I played, this is my favorite project to work on. I do have some that like just snuck up, and it's usually the characters that you go, I don't think there's any possible way that I could play this character, and then you really have to dive in and create a completely new persona, and then that's really fun to get to do. I think the better question for which characters do I like to do, because I like to voice all of them, is which characters do my friends and family tolerate the most? Because those are the ones that I do outside of work. Most of the time, my friends are like, please don't do a voice. Unless they're other voice actors, in which case you just start a character voice and they'll just create their own and have a conversation with you. As if that's just how we talk, which is nice. But my family and friends, I think if I did like character voices, they would be like, are you having a stroke? Like, what's going on? The one exception to that, my husband does think it's funny when I do my Kotaro voice. It's the one voice that he'll be like, just say the Kotaro. I'm like, the one is 10 episodes. He speaks a lot. So that's the one that he thinks is funny, which is probably the most unlike me. But yeah, no, I can't walk around screaming like, Venus power makeup! My brother would be furious. My brother loves to play video games. He got very frustrated with me when he found out I was cast in Cyberpunk 2077. He's very supportive and thinks it's very cool what I do, but he says I play video games to like escape my reality and my daily life. And he's like, I've been looking forward to this game for years, and I'm now going to escape my life and hear my sister screaming. It's not fun. Which when he explained it like that, I was like, no, I get it. He actually did say, he's like, Cyberpunk doesn't really sound like you at all, but I cannot play Borderlands. And I was like, what? Dude, why? And he was like, when the anarchy is very high and you're just screaming, he's like, it's very triggering for me. It's like being in public. So, but yeah, so the characters that I do the most outside of work are few and far between. It's whatever my family is gonna say, please don't do that anymore. I pick the ones that they are at least annoyed by. They don't like Lizzy from Black Butler, anything with a British accent.
Aww.
My family's like, please stop. Just don't do it. They are not interested. Yes?
Have you been featured on a show that you really liked?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
watched previously?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like I've won the lottery so many times that when I've sent in auditions going like, oh my gosh, it would be so cool if I just got to like play a tiny little background character in this, and then they give me like a really nice character with a great arc, or I get to play a character over multiple seasons and be one of the main cast. It's happened all the time. And I'm very, very fortunate that is the case. I would say there really hasn't been many projects that I've worked on that I've been like, man, I really wish that I didn't work on this. I worked on the other thing instead. But I will say I had been aware of Fortnite and was very impressed by Fortnite and all that they had created, and so I had auditioned so many times. And then when they called me in to voice the Imagined, they were like, so the Imagined is one of the 7. We don't know if you're aware of that. I was like, I get to be one of the 7? And they were like, yeah, do you know who else is a 7? I was like, I mean, yeah, I know The Rock is part of the 7. I'm part of a group with The Rock? And they're like, and Brie Larson. I was like, her name is Captain Marvel. Let's be very, appropriate here. So yeah, that was very surreal. But then you go home and you've signed an NDA and you can't talk to anybody. That's probably the worst part. You get very excited about working on a project and you're like, I can't wait. Like I found out I was in Cyberpunk. I was like, I can't wait to tell somebody that I'm in Cyberpunk. Who am I going to tell? Absolutely no one. I can't tell anyone for like years. So yeah, there was a time that I was like, I'm just gonna tell my grandmother. She's not gonna know anything. Then we found out very quickly that while my grandmother didn't know, she told her friends. And I was like, maybe. So I, luckily not on any big projects, but I was like, oh, we can't tell her anything. So yeah, I would just like keep it to myself, and then I like live the whole day being like, I'm in Fortnite. I'm one of the 7. This is so cool. And I remember because I had to mail something, and I walked into the post office, and I'm like, I can tell these people, they won't know. No, I can't tell a soul. And the same thing happened with Pokemon. Like I was recording at home because it was during the pandemic. My husband's a huge Pokemon fan, and I got the email, and I remember we were having breakfast, and I got an email that was like, you're officially a Pokemon. And I was like, oh my God. And he was like, is everything okay? And I was like, yes, it's great. He was like, what happened? And I was like, I can't, nothing. It's fine. It's fine. And then when the show came out, he was like, Groupie sounds a lot like you. And I was like, it is me. And he was like, oh my God, was this with the table? I was like, that was that. Yes, absolutely. I found out I got cast in Sailor Moon, which was another one of those like, oh my God, I watched Sailor Moon as a kid. I was driving to my rehearsal dinner for my wedding. And they were like, you have all these stipulations if you want to be in the show. We're not going to tell you who you're cast as. You have to sign this. You can't tell anybody. You have to agree to do these events. You have to do all these other things. I was like, done, all the things, yes. But my maid of honor, I screamed in the car, and she was like, oh my God, did you forget something? And I was like, no, I'm so excited. She was like, I know, because you're getting married. And I was like, yeah, and also something I can't talk about. And she was like, oh, okay. So I didn't even tell my husband that we showed up to the event. I told him like a week before that we were going to be announced as like being in Sailor Moon. I was like, do you want to come? And he was like, who are you? I was like, I can't tell you. The orange dress that I was wearing should have been a tip-off, because I didn't have a lot of orange in my closet. But he wore a green t-shirt, and my good friend Amanda Miller, who plays Sailor Jupiter, always still says, your husband was on Team Jupiter the day we met, so what does that say? So now he has orange shirts that he wears to support Sailor Moon. So it's happened many times, and I get very excited, but then I have to like kind of brainwash myself to forget so that I don't live in that like, I'm so excited, but I can't keep a secret. And I think that's probably why my family will say I'm terrible at keeping secrets about gifts or parties or things like that. And I was like, I keep secrets for a living, and it's very hard. You guys are going to know what you're getting for Christmas. I'm sorry. That's the trade-off. You can't get away from it. Yes?
Can you think of any roles, voiceover or live action, that really pushed you, pushed your boundaries, or like at the end of the day really helped improve your range or your diversity?
Yeah, absolutely. And this has happened multiple times in my career, which I think is what's great about being an actor, is as soon as you get a character and you play a role and you go, all right, I did that. Now it's comfortable. So now that's not something that you need to, that's not like a risk anymore, and you just get used to doing that. When I first started doing anime, fighting reactions and like fighting efforts and doing fight scenes, that was like very weird and hard to figure out like, okay, all this movement, how do I make the sound that matches this? And how can we do it super fast? Because sometimes when we're recording, they ideally want you to chase a scene where you watch the fight scene and you react as you're going through, and so they could probably get like 20 or 30 seconds done in real time. in the beginning, we'd have to like take it one punch at a time or like one swipe at a time, just because I was like, how do I make it sound like it fits? And I remember the director, we were working on Negama, and I was playing Setsuna, and Jamie Markey really like took her time and guided me through that. And then after that, I played a lot of fighting characters, and it became something that people go, oh, she does that really well, so just cast her in that all the time. And when I worked on Panty and Stocking with Garterbelt, Colleen Klinkenbeard said, I cast you in the show, your character has the deepest voice in the show of all the women. And I was like, why did you do that? Why? She was like, because I know you could do it. And I was like, I'm gonna get fired. But we got through it, and so once I had started practicing on voicing in a lower voice, then I was like, all right, I can do this. And then I started auditioning for video game characters with a lower voice. And I remember a couple studios were like, we didn't know that your voice could do that. And then that's all I did for like years and years, was characters with a lower voice. And you just kind of need one person that's going to give you the opportunity and trust you enough to try. Singing was terrifying for me. And I remember the first time I worked with Brina Palencia, and she was like, no, you're a good singer. And I was like, you're just very nice. And now I've sung for a lot of projects. I remember there was, when I auditioned for Bones, I thought quite certainly it was the worst audition of my life. It was a miserable day. I flew in from Texas for the audition. My flight was delayed. I was stuck in traffic for an hour and a half of what should have taken 20 minutes. Therefore, I was 45 minutes late for my audition. I'm running in, sweating, just terrified and angry. I tripped going into the audition. I was bleeding, and I didn't have time to find a Band-Aid because I was so late. So there's literally blood dripping from my knee. And I walk in, and everybody else in the audition like looks pristine and camera ready, and I look like I just came out of being chased by a dinosaur. And so I was very distracted, was very angry, was not really focused and zen and in the moment that you would like to be for an audition, where you're like, I've done all of my warm-ups, I'm ready to perform. Like, no, that was not, this was like, I'm alive, I'm here, that's all we've got. And the casting team was so kind. They're like, take your time, whatever you need. I was like, look, I'm late, you just tell me what you need. I'm happy to be here. I know I seem very stressed and angry, but I am so thrilled to be here. And I walked in, and the producers were there, the creator of Bones was there, the director, like, worst case scenario for the day that I was having, best case scenario for an actor in any other situation. And I walked in, and the producer leans over, he's like, she's such a great look for this role. And that is like, on camera, that's what you're usually expecting people to say, like, the look isn't working. If they say the look fits, you're like, okay, I just gotta be a decent actor and know how to talk. So as soon as they said that, I was like, this is the worst day of my life. Like, everything should be aligning for me to get this job, and I suck today. And I did the scene, and they were like, don't try to force anything. If you can't cry, if you can't get there, don't stress about it. Just be honest with yourself. I was like, I'll try it again. Wasn't happening, so I said, I'm so sorry, it's just not happening today. And I left the audition. I'm like, my agent's gonna drop me. I'm the worst person ever in the world. And I had to fly back to LA that night, fly back to Texas that night for a film premiere. And I was on the plane, phone was turned off, and I had like 5 voicemails. And my agent was like, so you booked it? And I was like, booked what? She was like, Bones. And I was like, no, they made a mistake. This was supposed to go to somebody else. And she was like, no. She was like, I live down the street from one of the casting director associates, and she was like, they said, as soon as you left, they were like, she was so honest and so real. I was like, yeah, no, I bled on your floor. Really honest. And so then I got the job, and I was terrified because I'm like, I couldn't do the job. Like, the job requirement I couldn't do in the room, and how am I gonna do this? And I remember the director was Chad Lowe, and he said, you've got it, just trust yourself. And I was so angry and so stressed and so depressed. I remember, like, there's 3 cameras on you. David Boreanaz is here. Emily Deschanel's right in front of me. Everybody's, like, waiting. And I'm like, oh, my God, what am I going to do? And I just gave up. I blanked out. I think I dissociated. I don't remember what. I was, like, so panicked. And we did the scene, and it was done in, like, 1 take. And everybody was like, that was amazing. You did such a great job. And I was like, I don't remember any of it. But I left the set, was going back to the trailer, and the director was like, I knew you could do it because you were so honest and present. I just needed you to relax and allow yourself to just be the character. And then after I left that day, I realized what me and the character had in common is we were such perfectionists that being a perfectionist got in our way and ruined things for us. And it's a similar theme with Makoto in Persona 5. So one of the things that I have found with the characters that I've played, especially the moments that are really hard that I don't want to do, or that I say, like, I have nothing in common with this character, it's actually that I have so much in common with that character in that moment, and it's something I don't like about myself or I don't want to look at. And getting to play that character is a way to confront that fear. And if I take the time when I go home, usually I'm exhausted after those sessions, and if I take the time to go home and go, oh, that's why I don't like that, or that's why I got cast, that's what they saw, it's very healing, not just as an actor, but as a human being, which is very helpful. So that was one of the worst case experiences that actually at the end of the day, I was like, man, being an actor is pretty magical. Like, I just need to get out of my own way half the time, which I feel like is a lesson for all human beings. We often want something or want to control our lives so much that oftentimes if we just, like, give up and get out of our own way, there's a lot of magical stuff that happens because we've done all of the work up to that point. So it's a pretty weird job. Yes?
This is a bit more of a serious question,
Sure.
and I hope that's okay.
No, totally.
But have you ever had any sorts of uncomfortable fan experiences or experiences with the toxic side of fan culture, whether it be something that you were in or like something that the directors of a project, a creative decision that they made, whatever it may have been? Have you ever experienced something like that, and how did that affect you, and how did you deal with it?
Oh, sure. I mean, like, the internet it can be a really lovely place, and it can also be a really terrifying and awful place. And that's not just the case for somebody who has a sort of public job. That's the case for anyone and everyone. I was bullied when I was in high school, and I've told people many times, I'm like, thank God I did not go to school when social media existed, because when I went home, at least the bullying would stop for a couple hours. That's not the case now. And that is certainly true if you're in any sort of public job. Not just being a voice actor, not just being an actor, you could just be like in a play that somebody saw in your community, and there's somebody that was really mad about something that you did, and they find you online and they want you to know how angry they are about something that your character did or how much they hated your costume. And a lot of the stuff, you go, well, I can't take this personally, it's not directed at me, they're just very angry about something and they need to find an outlet. But it can be very difficult to not take it personally when sometimes people are saying things that absolutely are personal and are very hurtful. And I know the easy answer is people say just try not to read it, but like, you know, that's also hard. Because oftentimes they tweet or send messages and they @ you, so it shows up in your direct messages or in your direct feed. I usually try not to respond to anything that's very hurtful, but there have been a couple of times that people have been very angry about stuff. It made me really, really sad and really, really depressed. And usually because something is more high profile, then there's more eyes on it, then people start to get more critical about anything and everything. They'll comment on your appearance, they'll comment on things that you say, they'll comment. I had somebody that said, like, I think she seems too nice all the time, and I think that's really bad and detrimental, and I think we need to cancel that. And so I told a couple people, I was like, I don't know what I did. And someone was like, you're being canceled for being too nice? Cherami, like, ignore that. It's not a big deal. But I was very afraid, like, anytime somebody uses the word cancel associated with another person, you're afraid studios are going to say, I'm not going to hire this person just because. So that's usually when I have to talk to my friends and family, and I have to say like, is this actually something that I need to be concerned about? Is this something that I need to work on? And oftentimes they're like, no, it's just an angry person. Just like, let it go. And if you have people that you trust, that you are able to be surrounded with, that can say like, don't even worry about that, it's not important, that's very helpful. But I'm not gonna say that it doesn't get to me and it doesn't hurt my feelings, because we all wanna do a good job. We all wanna do our best work in anything that we do, and nobody wants anybody to be mad at them or to hate them. But I also understand that people get angry and they get frustrated and they're passionate about stuff and they wanna share their opinions. And that's, kind of, everybody's allowed to do that. I just will always encourage, if there's something that you don't like, instead of publicizing what you don't like, promote something that you do like. You can always say like, if you didn't like a movie, don't talk about how much you hated that movie, because you're also giving it press. Talk about a movie that you did like, instead of bashing what you didn't. And you're still getting your point across. That movie is still being forgotten, and you aren't giving it any sort of promotion, and you get to promote something that you actually loved. But yeah, it's kind of a nature of the beast, unfortunately. Yes.
I'd like to thank you for being a super professional right now.
Oh,
because
totally.
you've been sitting in the dark talking to all of us.
It's like the fireside chats.
Yeah.
It's very like
It's like
relaxed at the campfire. It's totally fine.
I know, but like literally, come on.
Yeah.
Be real.
Better.
I have recorded in the dark many times before too.
I know, but
It's all good.
Somebody the power of the Undertaker.
Well, thank you.
but basically, I just wanted to know, I guess more positive. What was like something that you found really touching and like nice that you have had in fan interactions? Like,
So many.
yeah, because I'm sure that. But, like,
Yeah, it far outweighs any sort of like questionable or awkward, and that's why like it's also very difficult whenever people will say, oh, this I had this horrible fan interaction or whatever the case is, and oftentimes the person that is doing or the fan that is trying to interact doesn't think that they're being out of line. They don't know, they're very enthusiastic, and so I try to keep that in perspective. And most of the time, the fans are incredible and so lovely, and I would say that's probably 99.999% of the cases, which is fantastic. There's no way that I could narrow down to like, this is the best fan interaction, because it just wouldn't be fair to the other like hundreds of thousands of people that I've been fortunate enough to meet. It's so cool getting to meet people. Like, there's people that I've met when they were 6 and 7 years old, and then they come back and they want to take the same picture, and they're in the same cosplay as they grow up, which is like so cute, and they'll come back again. One person put that shirt, they wore a cosplay, we did it for 3 years, and then they started putting all those pictures on the shirt, and then it was like one of the shirt within the shirt within the shirt, and then she wanted me to sign it every year, and I think she was like, so I'm gonna be graduating from high school, and I wanted to give you my shirt. I was like, no, I can't do this. This is our time together. It's so sweet. And then there's been moments like with Sailor Moon. It's very special when a mom will come up and I watched this in the 90s, and this is so special. You're the Sailor Venus that my daughter is watching, and so this is her first convention, and she wanted to cosplay, and I wanted her to meet you. All of those things are like really, really special. My special moment where I got to be like, I got to fangirl, and it was like kind of embarrassing for me later, but I didn't care at the time. Like, I really lost it. My dad is a huge Green Bay Packers fan, therefore I am a huge Green Bay Packers fan. So we grew up watching the Packers and being all about the Packers, and being from Dallas, Texas. It's not like a popular thing. You're at sports day, everybody's wearing the Cowboys, and you're like wearing green and gold, and everyone's like, get outside. It also doesn't go well because the Packers have beaten the Cowboys the last few years, so people are very angry at me.
I know the feeling here.
But we were at San Diego Comic-Con promoting Sailor Moon and Boruto, and asked Viz, so how's everything been going? They were like, well, we had these cosplayers. We had a couple of football players from the NFL come, and they love the show, and so they wanted to cosplay a couple characters from Naruto. I was like, that's so cool. What team do they play for? She was like, oh, the Green Bay Packers. I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, I don't know if they're still here. I was like, why would you let them leave? What? She was like, well, I mean, maybe they'll come hang out. We don't have any more events scheduled with them, but maybe they'll come to a panel. I was like, can we give them something so they'll come back? Like, do we have things for them so they'll come back? And she was like, why do you care? And I was like, because it's the Green Bay Packers. What do you mean, why do I care? I don't care about any of the teams, but this is like my team. And they didn't know if they were going to come back. They were like, you know, one of the actors is like a huge Green Bay Packers fan. And I don't know what else they said, but it was probably something very embarrassing. So we showed up to a Sailor Moon panel at San Diego Comic-Con, and they were like, you know, it's so special. They're introducing everybody. We're on a table. We're trying to be very like professional and like, you know, respectable. And they're like, it's so cool getting to come to events like this, especially for Sailor Moon. Like, you know, you have these little girls here. There were like 5 little girls with their moms, and they're all dressed impeccably as the Sailor Guardians, and they were so adorable. They're like, we have these little Sailor Guardians, and then we have NFL players, and they were dressed in Sailor Guardian colors, and I was like, I just stood up and jumped off the stage and ran. And as I'm running, I was like, I should check first. I was like, can I hug you? As I'm running. It would have been very awkward if they were like, no. And I would have been like, penis power, makeup, back to the stage. But they were all very, very kind. We took pictures, and I was like, that's going to be the end of it. They came back to an autograph signing, and they brought me one of the players. Mike Daniels was on the cover of Sports Illustrated one year. And he's like, I have one copy left. Because I said, I got to get an autograph for my dad. Will you sign this Post-it note? And he was like, I don't want to give your dad a Post-it note. And he brought the magazine and like signed it to my dad. And I was like, oh my gosh, we got it framed. We gave it to my dad for his birthday. It was very cool. My dad was super stoked about that. And then he sent me a message on Twitter or Instagram. He was like, if you ever want to come to a game at Lambeau, let me know. And I was like, I will not be that person, but I must be that person. And so I got to bring my dad and my mom and my brother to a game at Lambeau, and it was so cool because when you pull up outside of Lambeau Field, the fans have painted the players, and there were like 5 or 6 players that they had painted in the style of their favorite anime, and they had made them anime characters. So I had to take pictures of obviously all of the players that were like depicted in anime. So that was like a super cool moment for me because it was an opportunity of something that I worked on, that something that I'm a fan of, and they're a fan of what I do, and I got to gift my dad the opportunity to go to a game at Lambeau Field, which he was like, I never thought I was gonna get to do this, ever. So it was like all the worlds colliding, and you realize like how small the world is and how much people really love and look out for each other, and it was so special. And there are things like that that happen all the time when I go to conventions, but that's one of the times where I got to be a crazed fan, and it was received. They were very generous and understanding, so that was very special. Yes, up at the top.
Just as somebody who appreciates Kotaro, could you run me through kind of what the initiation for that was like?
Yeah, so I got a weird phone call right before Christmas break from my good friend Stephanie Shea that said, hey, I heard that you've started directing stuff and that you've taken a big break. Do you want to direct something? I think I've got a show that you might like to do. And I said, okay, I would love to direct something. The beginning of the year seems pretty open, so I should be okay. And I said, but my one concern is, if anything comes up, is there going to be another director that I could split this time with? Because if you never know if a game's going to come back or a show's going to come back, and you're like, I'm directing something, and they're like, then we have to recast you. So I said, is there any way that I could split this? She's like, absolutely. That's kind of why I'm contacting you. I want to have 2 directors for this project. And she told me a little bit about it. I was like, this sounds really sweet and very special. And so I got the episodes, watched them over the Christmas break, and I was obsessed with the show. But because it was over the Christmas break, nobody was able to get scripts done or casting done because all the agencies were closed and everything was shut down. So when we got back like January 1st, you kind of got to wait a couple days for the agencies to open for us to send auditions out, and then you got to wait for auditions. And when push came to shove, I found out that we were already starting the clock behind schedule, and they already had a set release date. And they were like, "What do you mean you weren't working over the Christmas break?" We're like, "We can't do that. This is a union production, and everybody kind of like shuts down in the town." And so we figured it out, but it was a little tricky. We were gonna have all the kid roles were gonna be voiced by kids, and I was also very excited to get to direct kids. And then we found out how many lines Kotaro had and how much time we did not have, and it was not physically going to be possible to have a child voice Kotaro. There were not enough hours in the day, and legally we could not make a child work that many hours. So we had made our decisions for like who we wanted and who was going to get cast as Kotaro, and we were super stoked with our choice. And then they said, we're going to have to go with the adult options. And I had talked to the director and said, do you want us to send in auditions? So all of the production team sent in auditions for, oh gosh, that warns me that we only have a few minutes left. But anyway, we had done the auditions, and the whole production team had auditioned, and they took all the names off of, sent the auditions in, and I was like, I'll get to do some background voices, that'll be fun. Maybe I'll get to be like a random parent of a child who's like pitching a fit in the background, that'll be sweet. And then Stephanie called and was like, hey, do you think physically you could direct and voice Kotaro, because the production team got back and they blindly selected your choice. And I thought, this is probably a really bad idea, but I love this show so much, and I love Kotaro so much. I just wanted to practice doing a little boy voice, because I don't usually get to do those very often, and I never thought that I would get cast. I got a lot of practice, that's for sure. But the show is very, very special to me, and it was a very special experience because I kind of felt like, you know, you're like your adult and your inner child looking out for each other at the same time. So I kind of felt like the little caretaker of Kotaro, and also making sure, as Kotaro wants to take care of everybody in the show, it was my responsibility to make sure that even people that would be depicted as a villain or a bad guy, Kotaro would never want that. So I had to always keep in mind, like, Kotaro doesn't see people this way, and I would explain to people, like, this is Kotaro's show. And so anybody who's even behaving in a way that we, as a viewer, would go, oh my gosh, they're the worst, but Kotaro still loves them and sees the best. So as we're working on the show, I had to explain to the actor, like, I know you don't like what they're doing, and I know you don't like what they're working on, and you have to keep that in perspective, but also know that this person is hurting, and the protagonist of the show sees that they're hurting and loves them anyway. So it's our job as the actor and the production team to see that they're hurting and love them anyway, because that's the only way that they'll heal. And it was really special to be a part of a show that everybody was on the same page and wanted to be a part of that. And of course, everybody rallied behind sweet little Kotaro. How can you not? He's the cutest little creature ever. One more question? Yes.
Right here.
So, I have to ask this.
Okay.
What was your inspiration for getting into Sword Art Online? What was like the selling point of why you decided to take that?
That was, I mean, speaking of just like getting auditions, that was the very first audition when I moved out to LA. I had moved to LA, and I had been in LA, I think 6 to 8 months, and I couldn't get a voiceover audition to save my life. I was doing all sorts of on-camera audition and on-camera work, but I couldn't get a voiceover agent, couldn't get it. And I had done so much work at Funimation, I was like, surely somebody's gonna let me audition for something. And then I got an audition out of the blue for a show called Sword Art Online, and I watched the first 2 episodes, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love this so much. And I was real confident that I was not gonna get cast as Asuna, because Asuna is like so pristine and so polished and so like, I mean, I'm like, she's like the perfect princess, but she's also very fierce and feisty and has like this beautiful emotional capacity about her. But I was like, there's no way that I'm polished and like, you know, pristine enough to do this voice. And they called me in and said, so we like what you did, but we want to clean her up a little bit because she's very much like, comes from a very wealthy family. And so I met the producer and the director, and I had a callback, and we finessed this voice. And I left the callback, and then like a week later, they said, so you got cast as Asuna. And I couldn't believe it. And so that was my very first voiceover job when I moved to LA. And if you had told me then that 10 years later we would still be working on it, I would have been like, yeah, no, that's not gonna happen. So she's very special to me for a million reasons. But that team felt like my first way to connect with people in Los Angeles, and now they've become like family, which is really, really special. So that was really fun to be a part of. Okay, let me see if I can do, okay, I think I can do like maybe one or two more. Yes.
So what were some of your favorite characters that you played, and what made them seem so special to you? And can you tell me why they're all from Gundam?
Oh. Well, look, they're all very special in very different ways because there's been so many times where I've gone, why did I get cast as this character and not this character? Like I'll audition for one character, and the casting director will come back and say, so we cast you for this other character based on that audition. I'm like, what? Why? And funnily enough, when you mention Gundam, that was one of the situations. I auditioned for a completely different character, and they called me in for a session, and they said, so you're playing this character called Kigali. And I was like, oh, I didn't audition for her, because I thought, like, there's no way. And the director was like, yeah, we heard your other audition, and we were like, that's Kigali. And I was like, oh, I totally misinterpreted the breakdown. She was like, no, you interpreted it exactly correctly, because we heard what we needed to. So then as you're working on the project, you're like, oh, that's why I got cast as this character. And there's a moment with every project I've worked on, even if it's a character that has one line, where I go, I needed to hear this today, or oh my gosh, I'm connecting with this, or this is what I needed to deal with. The scene like happened at the perfect time, and it's like very magic synchronicity moments. And Gundam definitely has many of those. Like, I mean, I got to work on Gundam Thunderbolt. Never thought I would get to work on that character. Have nothing in common with that character. But then at the very last scene that we were working on with Claudia, I just like started crying. And I was like, man, why do I feel so connected with this character? And it was like this grief that she was experiencing and all the ways that she was trying to cover it up and keep fighting on. And Gundam is so good about that. Like finding all of the characters are covering up something or dealing with a deeper secret and can't, at least the characters that I play, can't be who they truly, truly are or express that because they have to protect someone or are fighting for the betterment of the team. And that's something that clearly I haven't learned because I keep getting cast as those characters, so I still have to learn to like let my guard down, I guess. But that's been very nice to get to work on, and every time it happens, I'm like, oh, there it is. I know, still haven't learned this lesson. This is a great show, though. So yeah, it's been really cool to get to work on, and I love. It's all Gundam, but it's all presented in such a different way that even people that go, oh, I don't like this Gundam series, but this Gundam series is my jam. It's like that's so fantastic. It's one of my favorite things about anime. Is like. We can have things that exist kind of in the same universe, but it tells a story so differently, and you see how different human beings are, that some people will go, this one really hits me, but this one not so much, and you go, wow, anime really is so nuanced and perfect that it hits all these moments that really touches and connects with each human being, which is so, so special. Last question. Yes?
How do you feel about like when you are watching like a show or like playing a game and then you hear your own voice?
It's weird. I'm not gonna lie. It's probably weirder for other people around me. It's gotten, I guess it's gotten a little less weird in some ways. The first line is always the weirdest, and then I just forget. I don't think of it as myself. I think of it as the character. But the first line is always like an adjustment of I'm like, oh, that's me. Wait, yeah, that's me. Because my first thought always when I hear myself is like, did I get replaced or did they change my voice? Like, did they hate it? Like, that's how insecure I am about everything, that I'm like, do they adjust the voice? Is it still me? Am I still playing this character? And then I just like get lost in the character. But there's been a couple times that I've been playing a video game, specifically one that my husband really enjoyed and was amused by. I was playing Cyberpunk when the game came out, and obviously V has a very different sounding voice than I do, and a very different demeanor than I do. And I was getting used to the game and like how it works, and V was being very aggressive about stuff. And there was a homeless person who was asking for money, and so I gave them money. And then he threw it back at me, and I was like, dude, that's like, I'm trying to be kind, and I'm talking to the screen as V is talking. My husband's like, this is like very, like V's like, dude, get out of my way. And I'm like, hey, we're just being nice. Like, I was like having a conversation with myself and talking to all the other people in the world. So yeah, it's a character that sounds similar to me. I think it's more amusing for people when it's different. But like when I played Gage with my brother, he had to mute Gage because I was like quoting the lines back, and so he was hearing it in stereo, and he's like, "You're gonna do this? I'm not playing the audio in the game. I'm just not doing it." So yeah, it's a. But usually when the character voice sounds different, I try to just be quiet and let people watch stuff. But then sometimes I have commentary, which is why I will never stream because I don't want to torture anybody with that experience. Only my loved ones, you know. But thank you guys so much for coming to the panel. I will be our very intimate panel. We'll just say it was at a campfire inside. We'll just like let people question how they got away with that. I will be at the table. I think I'll be back there later today at like 4 or 4:30. If there was a question that you did not get to ask that you would like to ask, please come by and say hey. Or if you just want to come hang out, I will be happy to see you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.